Tons of plastic each year.
Construction is cheaper, probably because there will be no potholes.
Now, if you want to make those public works people happy, heat the plastic roads. Now for a word from our sponsor, Robert.
Me! Hi, I'm Robert. Again. And heated roads, am I right? No more Christmas Day plying for the workers, which means less money spent.
How would you heat the roads? Plug in 1,000 blow dryers?
If you dig down 10 feet, temperature is 56 degrees. Install a pipe under the road.
Presto magic, plastic heated roads! Luckily, HDPE plastic has a melting point of 266 degrees Fahrenheit.
In Arizona, the roads would be liquid all summer.
Bad news. No more snow, no more ice. Means faster getaway from the cops.
How about it makes the road safer for North Ogden citizens? Now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
We had to make sure plastic roads would handle heat.
And cars.
Lots of cars.
First, we collected HDP plastic. That's the plastic stamped with a 2.
We cut milk jugs for hours.
My poor fingers.
Once the pieces were small enough, we melted them together to form plastic blocks of all thicknesses.
From there, we tested the durability by hanging a weight off the different plastic blocks.
We also threw them from a 3rd-story window.
Oopsie daisy.
Our thickest block of plastic could hold the most weight. Our thinnest piece didn't even get tested because it was so thin.
All 3 blocks survived the fall. The conclusion, HDPE plastic is strong and requires an extremely high temperature to melt.
North Ogden is putting in new roads. Why not take a chance to be innovative?
Plastic roads are found in Sweden, India, France, even San Diego.
The material is infinite, cheap,
And can even
Save the turtles!
Thank you so much. We'll put that in next year's budget. Thank you.
You didn't melt any Legos for these, did you? Good. That was awesome, buddy.
I failed to mention that Councilwoman Stoker is excused for the moment. She should be here later.
Brandon. Is that one of the kids? Oh, okay. Why don't you hold it up and say, hey, does this belong to anybody?
Okay, the meeting now is open for public comment. We'd welcome any comments from the group.
Meg Sanders, 2915 North, 875 East. I had to make sure that the kids were gone before I got up. No, really, thanks for letting them come. Thank you, Annette, for getting them on the agenda. My biggest issue is the North Pole. And so I'm up here to speak to that. I think it's very wonderful that there's going to be an activity in North Ogden, but I am going to question the inclusivity. I know that I live in a predominantly LDS area. My family helped settle the area. They are pioneers that crossed with the Martin Handcart Company. But that being said, one of the boys on my Lego League team is Jewish. So it's a bit odd when we have an opening prayer and say it in the name of Jesus Christ, amen, because, you know, he doesn't believe in Jesus. And there are portions in this community, myself, that's an atheist. I don't either. So it's very difficult for me to know that on city property we have a nativity. We're also doing a live nativity, and I don't know if it's exactly inclusive. And I know that I've read over and over and heard over and over that it's supposed to be no more us versus them. But that's definitely something that's pushed when we don't celebrate all types of people and all types of people's beliefs. And if we can't do that, then we probably shouldn't.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening, Neil Berube, 1532 East, 2525 North. I'm assuming in the public hearing we'll have time for comments,
Yes.
but I do have a comment prior to that regarding the Patriot Point Development Agreement. As I've read through that, and I've talked to John about this, I have one concern. In there, we're putting a lot of reliance because we have a lot of trust in Orloff and Johnny. But in there, in the assignment provision, it basically says they just simply have to notify the city. I believe because this is an MPC zone and it goes out basically for 25 years, that the assignment ought to be one of the city granting approval, which won't be unreasonably withheld. I just believe that we've seen problems when we've got developers who are different, so I would ask the council to consider amending that agreement to require approval from the city, which won't be unreasonably withheld. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. See no other comments, we'll move on to the agenda. Discussion or action to consider a resolution adopting a development agreement for Patriot Point. Our presenter will be Rob Scott, our planning director.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council and audience. Let me give you an abbreviated version of last time. We spent quite a bit of time going through the specifics of the proposal. Tonight, I'm going to share with you what has taken place since the last time we met on November 12th. If you'll remember that the Planning Commission recommendation was reviewed regarding this particular application. And as within all legislative actions, which this one is, it has a little bit different twist to it that I'll just explain in a minute. So when the city's considering legislative matters, the Planning Commission acts as a recommending body to the City Council, which they have given you that recommendation. The city has wide discretion in taking legislative action. Examples of legislative actions are the general plan, zoning map, and land use text amendments. So what we're talking about is a zoning map amendment tonight. Legislative actions require that the Planning Commission give a recommendation to the City Council, and typically the criteria for making a decision regarding legislative matters requires compatibility with the general plan and existing codes. So giving that as by way of background, what we're here tonight is to consider two things. One is an ordinance adopting the zone change from RE20 to MPC, and we've given the initials PP to make sure we have the proper designation. The second part of this is to look at the development agreement that is companion to that ordinance. So let me just share with you that staff has worked diligently to make sure that the applicant and the city staff have come up with the appropriate and complete and updated documents to make sure that this has the ability to be considered for you tonight. We do have a couple of change requests that we'll cover here in just a minute. But let me indicate to you that we have, as indicated in the staff report, we have some updated exhibits. Exhibit B, the project narrative. Exhibit C, the site plan and trails. D, the preliminary plan. J1, the color board. And M, the mislabeled. Exhibit E, it should be labeled M. So with that, the staff has taken a look at this, and one of the things that we're going to recommend to you this evening is that as part of the development agreement, there's a couple of things that are being requested. One is in Exhibit E and in Exhibit M, it gives height restrictions. And the applicant has requested that, as you can see, that the current application had, or the initial application had a 34-foot height for the apartments. Now, the applicant has requested that we consider making that 41 feet, not add any additional stories to the project. It'll still have the same 3 stories in the project, but that would be 41 feet. Now, we've done this before. The Village at Prominence Point, we have 41 feet as the building height there, so that's something for you to consider. The applicant can share with you their reasoning behind that specific request. Beyond that, staff, and you also heard from Mayor Berube with respect to his request. I'm sure John can address that with you relative to that. Based on that, staff is recommending that you consider with the Planning Commission recommendation for adoption of this zone change and the development agreement with the updated exhibits as I have identified, and for your consideration also the request to take a look at the height for specifically the apartments. That's it, as far as the height change. John, do you have anything that you want to add?
So, council, with that height change request, it's the request, my understanding, and I think the applicant could talk to it, is the desire to have a steeper pitched roof as opposed to, I think right now it's designed as a 412, but just having the option of making the roof steeper and a little more. I guess some people prefer that. I think it's more attractive. So, and then on the referenced portion design relative to the assignment of the agreement, my logic in the way it is worded now is, I worry that every time the city's required to sign something to affect essentially a closing of a real estate transaction, there's a risk of somebody putting provisions in that unwind some portion of this agreement or add additional obligations to the city. And so that's kind of the reason that I didn't want us to have the language in there that we wouldn't be unreasonably, that we have to give written permission. But I would be okay if the council is okay to adding at the very back of this, it would be a release form that I can draft as part of this agreement that says this is what they would sign, that would say, we're okay with the transfer from this person to that person, just to make it clear that there's not a chance that someone in 5 years or 10 years would do something that made the city have a higher obligation or the developer less of an obligation. Does that make sense? So if the council wants to do that change, then I would ask that we also allow me to just create an exhibit. It wouldn't take long, but just a statement that would say, this is the form that the city would sign, so someone couldn't add additional stuff in there.
So with that being said, John, do we need to wait on this resolution or this adoption of this resolution for that, or?
I don't think you'd have to, but it also it basically would be entrusting the city attorney to have it write that up and have it not reviewed by the council. And if you wanted to, you could have the mayor approve it as well. It'd be about 2 paragraphs that says, it'll essentially almost replicate the existing assignment paragraph that says this is being transferred with all the obligations, all the benefits. There's no separation of obligations under this agreement, and there's nothing the city's waiving by allowing this assignment to happen, if that makes sense.
Yes. Would you maybe explain that a little bit more for me, John? I mean, from Neil Berube's concern, what are we? Explain that a little bit more.
So right now, in the agreement, it says that if they sell a portion of the property, so right now it's owned by the Double Lot Ranch. If the Double Lot Ranch sells a portion of the property, they have to provide written notice to the city that they've sold a portion of the property, a portion of the development agreement obligations, and the city just would work with the new individual. Essentially, we'd get notice that, hey, the title transferred, and we'd work with it. With what Neil had suggested, the city would actually have the right to, before that transfer happens, to look at who it was being transferred to, and if there was a logical or reasonable reason why the city objected to that transfer happening, then we could say you can't transfer it to that person. I'm trying to think of who that might be. I mean, a good example would be if, let's say, tomorrow someone tried to transfer it to me and say, that I was going to be the one developing this property. I think the city could say, no, we have an objection because John's been too involved in this project. And where it is right now, the city doesn't have the option to object to any purchasers. But what's being suggested by Mayor-elect Ruby is that there be a provision added that the city could object to it. And I'm just requesting if the council does want to do that, that we add the objection or the approval of the transfer is on this form, so that a title company or an attorney in 15 years doesn't try and add or remove provisions and then have the mayor or whoever sign it, if that makes sense.
So a good example would be at Prominent Point. Jack Barrett sells a parcel of ground to Jeff Shaw to put in the car wash. So we, as a council, we would be able to say, we really don't want that particular business or product to be developed on that piece of ground. That's what we're talking about.
It would actually be, the way this is written, it'd be an objection to the actual individual.
Okay.
Because as it is right now, for the car wash as an example, the use was reviewed by the council and approved. But so that would go through a different process. That would actually be an amendment of the development agreement to have a change of use or a change in concept. This would actually be some sort of objection to the person purchasing the project. So,
So give me an example.
So visionary, but
yeah. So, as Councilman Barker was saying, Visionary Homes purchased the townhome portion of the project from the original developer. And if the city, let's say we'd had a really terrible experience, they were violating rules. Let's just make it clear, Visionary has not violated rules and ordinances and stuff. But if it was a developer who had, and the city could say, listen, we object to it, and here's the reasons why. Okay. And that would at least allow us to be involved in that conversation. But it would only be the transfer of ownership. It wouldn't be, the thing I'm most concerned about is actually tied to the projects, the idea being that if they're transferring ownership, they're transferring everything. So all the obligations as well as all the benefits, which is why it's currently written the way it is. It's just making it, my concern is that in some of the transfers on some projects we've done development agreements for, not every obligation was transferred. And so there's been some back and forth between the original developer, the new person, on who's in charge of what, the timing of different things. And it's caused a sticking point for the city. And so that's the reason the paragraph is currently written the way it is. I think we could add in the language that Mayor-elect Ruby has suggested. I'm adding the caveat that if we do, I want to say we'll have a firm form that says this is what the city signs. We're okay with the transfer of ownership from this person to this person.
Okay. Yes. Councilman Swanson.
Two questions. The first one being, I think has already been answered, and that's that as I read the assignment portion, as I read it, all the obligations that are agreed to in the development agreement go with any assignment. Is that correct?
That's the way it's currently.
The way it's currently written. The second question that I have is, does the city want to start getting involved in whether or not a sale from one private individual to another can take place? I mean, where does that stop?
That's kind of my concern too.
I mean,
That was my concern.
we have, is it only applied to the MPC zone? Can the city then, somebody come in and ask the city to object to somebody from California coming in because we don't want any more Californians and this person has a reputation and they want to buy a big home here in North Ogden? At what point would the city be prohibited, if we opened that door, from stepping into any real estate transaction and saying, no, we don't like you, you can't come in?
So,
And maybe I misunderstand, but.
no, I'm gonna try and give you both arguments as articulately as I can. So one argument in favor of the language and in favor of the city approving the transfer is the city is heavily involved in the approval of this project, the design of the project. In fact, the city will be owning 6.5 acres in this area, and so there's a little bit stronger of a connection to it than your normal subdivision, where it's just raw ground and the city eventually gets the road and the underground infrastructure. The flip side of that is that, or the other opposing argument is essentially what you articulated, which is how involved does the city get? Where's the line drawn in the transactions? I mean, I don't think anyone would read this provision this way, but if there is a chance someone could say, well, every time you sell a unit in there, the city has to then be involved in the transfer of title, and I don't think that's the intent of what anyone's suggesting, but that's kind of the other extreme. And so it is a policy decision. It's what the council wants to do, and I don't think either of them are bad options. It's just they're two slightly different approaches that somewhat change the way the city would react in 10 years if the property changed ownership.
Here. So the follow-up question to that is, let's take it away from an individual home. Let's say Lyman Barker goes to sell his property. And, the typical reasoning that we've used in the past would say it gets Zone X. And the council at the time wants it to be RE20 or above for whatever reason. Could the council say, well, you can sell it as long as it's RE20, everything around you is R110, but we are going to demand that this be RE20, and you can't sell it to this person unless it's RE20. Could the council do that?
If it was part of the zoning and the development agreement, it could be tied together. Typically, the council does have full rights to say what zone it's going to be if they're asking to change the zone.
Right.
But typically with those zone changes, there hasn't been any sort of a restriction on who it's sold to or
So
who
really
develops
this would
it.
only apply then if we are in a development agreement situation?
Yeah.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like to ask for a, what's the word?
Suspension of the rules?
Suspension, thank you, John. Suspension of the rules, and ask Mayor-elect Berube, since you're going to be involved here in just a couple weeks. I'd love to hear your thoughts behind this and help us understand where you're coming from, because you get to do that
Thanks,
in just
Phil.
a couple weeks. You bet.
Yeah, appreciate it. Once again, Neil Berube, 1532 East, 2525 North. I don't think what we're asking is unusual, Phil, and we have many leases in the business I'm in now where an assignment has to be approved because we want to know who's in that building operating it. We're putting a lot of reliance in this project, if you'll recall, in the discussion, and the document's really well written, and I have a lot of confidence in Orloff and Johnny. But in the previous discussion, we put a lot of emphasis on that. And I just think in 25 years, a lot of things can change. And it's only stating that we have to give approval which won't unreasonably be withheld. My fear is that you get a developer that's not of the quality of Orloff and Johnny, and then we're battling these guys in a very important aspect of our city, which has a lot of attention paid to it. And I just think the city has the right to make sure we're dealing with a quality developer. The citizens are relying on us to make sure that we have quality development in the city. And I will just tell you that this is not an unusual situation. Just about every lease we have, the owner of the property, wants to know who's going to be in there. And I think as a city, we want to know who's going to be developing it. So that's the thought process. And once again, the provision that says it won't unreasonably be withheld would require something fairly substantial for us not to authorize the transfer. So and it goes out 25 years. A lot of things can change in 25 years. And I know John's concern is that, we don't want to unwind the agreement. I don't think that's the intention, to unwind the agreement. But there may be a time where that may want to happen, particularly in this MPC where we are involved with the development agreement. I agree with you, Phil, to the point that we don't want to be involved in every transaction of real estate between private parties. But in essence, that's what MPC is about, right? For the city to have some control in the development. So that's the thought process.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was going to say, can we hear from either Johnny or Orlif and see what their thoughts are on this, since it affects them as well?
John Hanson, 1165 West, 4000 North in Pleasant View. I certainly understand the mayor-elect's idea. I do this in real estate. If I'm selling a piece of property that I still have an interest in, or I'm concerned who's going to go in there, but it has more to do if I own still a part of the property, whereas North Ogden doesn't going to own any of this property. And we've already jumped all the hoops of what we have to do on the property through the planning. So I'm worried that, let's say that Orlif and I want to sell 5 units to someone. Do we have to come here and get approval from the city that we sell this? Do you care about the price? Do you care about who's going to be living in that building? What would you really be looking at? Because we've already submitted our site plan, our plans, our elevation. We already know what's going to go in there. So I just think it's, in some areas, that might be a good thing to do, but I don't want to be coming in here to the council, hey, we've got 10 units here we want to sell to Ivory. Would that be okay with you guys? I mean, it's really none of your business because the transaction is private. And if we have built the project according to what we've said we would do, or you've required us to do it, I don't see any need to come to the city and say, would that be okay if we do it? The only way I could see it would change is if there's 6 phases in this project, okay? So you have the townhomes, 1, 2, and 3. You have the patio homes, 4. You have the commercial, 5. And then you have the apartment, 6. Your pond is a part of phase 1. So I guess the only way I could see around it is if you limited the phases, that you wanted to, if we decide to sell a phase, that the city would have, could withhold it. But it just says, I've never seen it like this, especially the way Mr. Call designed it, is whoever buys the property, they're not stupid. They're going to look at the agreements and realize that they have to abide by these agreements that have been signed. They have no way around it. And they still have to come in to Rob and the Planning Commission and the planners, okay, here's our site plan. See, we still are going to submit the site plan on phases 1, 2, and 3. And Rob has the ability to say, well, we want a few more trees here. We want this to look a little bit better. And that's where you have your control, is when the developer comes in to do it. So from Orlif and I's standpoint, I'm sure I speak for Orlif, that, we don't want our hands tied to have to come and get permission to sell private property from the city, when whoever buys it's already going to be obligated to fulfill the agreements that have been put in place. Because I think you'd be opening yourself up. What if someone does come from California and we turn him down for whatever reason, I think you're opening yourself up to problems to do that. If he has the money and he's willing to commit to the agreement, he should be able to buy the property. And so I don't know what you'd have to approve. I don't know what you're approving. Are you approving site plan? You approving buildings? Because all that's already going to happen anyway. We have to bring all that in, to the planning commission, to the city. So that's my opinion, and if Orlif has something else he can say. But certainly I understand Mayor Berube concern, but it isn't going to happen that way. There's too much money involved in this project to have it just blow by the wayside. And no one can divert from that development agreement that John Call has done. And no one can get around Rob Scott. He's too smart. As long as he keeps working. Well, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Mayor?
Yes.
John, as far as long as you and Orlif are involved in it, there is no problem, and I don't think that's what Neil was referring to, but it's like, yeah, the site plans, and it's been said, and they have to be to these standards and do this and that, but when somebody else has taken over that part of the project, they have come into the council and asked for a variance on what they want to put in, and they don't want to follow what you've already set up. So, I mean, that's it has happened, so that you can't say that that doesn't happen, because it has happened to us. It's that way with the Village of Prominence Points. But I don't think that's what Mayor-elect was saying. It's just you can still do your project. We don't want to be involved in that. But if a major change is coming down, then I don't know if it's good to have that option or just...
You just tell them no.
I was going to say, we told them no.
We have told them no, but we have told them no, but you can't say it does not happen, because...
I know it does. We talked about that already.
So... I mean, I think that the development will be wonderful, so I have no problem with that.
Thank you.
John, is there my biggest concern, and Mayor-elect, I understand the example that you gave where you own the property and you want to know who's leasing that out. My concern is there a legal precedent with a government entity getting in the middle of a private transaction and saying that private transaction cannot happen, where we have no interest? We have the development agreement, but we have no ownership.
It actually, in development agreements, it does happen for large master plan communities.
Okay.
It's not.
We just haven't had it here, so I'm not.
Yeah, we haven't had it here, but Salt Lake does it.
Okay. So
I think Harriman has it for the development out in Daybreak. There's some provisions like that, but it's not unheard of.
Okay.
I'm not also aware of any time it actually has been exercised.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So John.
On the flip side of that, though, there was some repercussions, unforeseen consequences when the city years ago got involved in the development and sale and what happened in Barker Park. No, it didn't go so well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, part of me says the city should not be involved in development.
So John Call, so what John Hanson said was, in the future, if there were to be, if we grant assignment, which gives them the opportunity to make that assignment on their own, how strong is that development that protects the assigned area to be protected? Does that make sense?
So it might actually, this might be a good question for Rob. Rob has some experience and has been involved in the plans and things. I can tell you from my perspective that one of the most important documents in here is a document that shows you distances between buildings and things like that. That we allow them. I think in the document it says they can move up to 6 inches, but anything more than that is an amendment to the development agreement. And so there's quite a bit of strength in the exhibits that provide some protection. You know, things like the building materials that are required, the building heights, things like that can't be changed without coming to the council. And so, in theory, if someone's buying the project, they should know all those obligations. It doesn't always happen. I mean, that's the story. There was some of those changes requested are because the group who purchased the village at Providence Point wasn't aware of everything that was an obligation for him. So it wasn't, and they were made aware because they came in and staff said, no, the agreement says this. So I think Rob's team has done a good job of providing it, and I think it'd be helpful for him to provide his opinion on what he feels about what's here as well.
Well, one of the most challenging aspects of any review process is the follow-up and making sure that we have appropriate documentation regarding what is the obligation for all of the parties, whether it's the city, whether it's the developer, whether there's a third party involved along the way. And when we've had clarity, things have been very smooth. And I have to say, I think John and I have worked extremely hard to try to simplify the MPC development agreement to accomplish that with respect to the exhibits. And I haven't been involved in this specific issue that you're discussing this evening and what have you. I just want to make sure that whatever we have it nice and clear so that everybody in the project that's involved there knows what their expectation is to be able to perform appropriately, and we move along.
So an assignee would then they would be very clear about expectations from the site plan and the development agreement.
Well, I think the guarantee is with this is that it's simply saying that that person is acceptable. Whether or not they have become fully aware of what's involved in the development agreement and that, I'm not sure we have any ability to
control that.
Yeah.
But knowing that John Hanson is an incredible realtor, he's going to do his due diligence and make sure that they're clear, right?
Did you hear that, John? Yeah, in other words, you put me on the spot, now I'm putting you on the spot.
Is it favorable to us, Orlif and I agree? May I come up? I wasn't thinking too clearly when I first started on this approval not unreasonably withheld. Normally that happens in real estate. If I own a piece of property and I sell it to the mayor, and there's no due on sell clause, which means he would have the right to sell it to someone else. Well, me as the seller, I like Brent Chugg, and I know he's financially able to make his commitment to me. So that phrase comes out, if he wants to sell it, then I would not unreasonably withhold my approval or disapproval for what he's trying to do, because he would be substituting himself for another person, and I would hold the mortgage. So in this case, the city, you don't own the property, and it's pretty hard to say, well, we want to approve the sale. I don't think it's that. You want to approve the integrity that it's going to happen the way that it's outlined to happen. There's too many checks and balances that are set here in the city. And I know all about your problems down there. I told you before about our friend Jack. We're not anything like him. And, I know Orlif, and if Orlif decides to sell some more, if we decide to sell, we want to make sure that they understand. We don't want to be sued for not disclosing the entire transaction. You can't do that. That's against the law. So That was my speech about not unreasonably withhold approval. It has to do with if you own something and you sell it to one person and he wants to sell it to another. That's the last thing I'll say.
No,
Thank you for your comment.
Orlifo Pikens, 1025 East, 2100 North. I remembered it, thank you. You may have noticed I don't get up here very often. I don't like getting up to speak. And since I've had my little problem, I get kind of lost upstairs a little bit. Listen, guys, here's what the real deal is. Everybody heads to their corner for the worst case scenario. So what would my worst case scenario be? Well, I won't use names, but we've got a few people in this city who get all charged up and they run around town with little notes and pass them out, and it's just because they're upset about something. I mean, for instance, they're upset about the park, and the next thing you know, they're down here carrying on about this pond. What I worry about is down the road, whether it be in 10 years or 15 years or whenever the case may be, something like that's going on in the city. And so all of a sudden, a sale becomes a charged up issue. That's me up here in my corner. I believe where Neil's coming from is a different corner, but everybody goes to their corner. More than likely what would happen is it would just be a pain. We would have to come in here, and you'd have a meeting on a certain date. We would have to come in here and get this approved. I don't think this is normal. I don't think in any respects this is normal. This is new. It's a little bit like the insurance companies 30 years ago started paying off lawsuits so that they could, it's cheaper to settle than it is to fight the suit. Well, let me tell you what that's grown into, a huge mess, a horrendous mess. Now, it's not in this state yet. It's down in California and Nevada, and I just got embroiled up in one of those, and it's awful. And it doesn't matter whether you're right or you're wrong. It just becomes a big embroiled mess, and that's what this is a slippery slope that could happen. Will it happen? I don't have any idea. But one question that I think you ought to ask John, is there any liability here for the city? Because one thing I've become very knowledgeable and cognizant of is you can't even imagine a little sliver of something that some attorney grabs onto, and all of a sudden you're embroiled in a lawsuit. You know, you can have one member on a city council that's unreasonable, and he's a person who's loud and obnoxious and carries on like a crazy guy, and pretty soon he's got 2 people and then 3 people, and you never know when you're out here on this end of it if you're going to end up being involved in that. Now, I will say, this is the best city council I've ever seen, okay? I don't care which way you go. I really don't. It doesn't matter to me. I don't know who I'm going to sell to. I don't know if I'm going to further develop this property. I was sitting out there thinking, I wonder if I could just walk up and say, just approve Johnny's piece and just let me be a farmer. Because I am really tired of this project. It has wore me out. I didn't ask for any of this. I never came looking for this, did I, John?
Nope.
I got into this trying to do, I don't mean to say a favor for the city, but I really have tried to work with the city in any way that I can. And I think most of you know examples of that. But if that leads to this, I'm tired of it. Okay, so now I'm getting emotional. I'm headed to my corner. I'm going to get out of my corner. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. I guess I had that one concern. I can understand that lease property and so forth as Neil mentioned it, but I wonder about restricting anybody from selling this property to this guy.
So if there is a legal ramification or a risk, it would be the idea that the approval from the city doesn't come through quick enough, and it causes the contract for the sale of the property to not go through. And then there is, I guess, in theory, a chance that the city might be at risk for interfering with the contract in some way, or, you know, I don't know how likely that is, but I think that there is, as was mentioned, there are people out there who would be interested in those type of lawsuits. And so that's, you know, there's a risk.
Yes, Ryan.
I like how you wrote in this agreement that the assignment, everything that this agreement goes with the property. I am not a fan of government getting involved in property rights, period. So I'm not in favor of, I respect Mayor-elect Berube, but I'm not in favor of us saying, yes, we're gonna approve the sale to this developer because we like him, but we're not gonna approve it to this developer because we don't like him. If there's a problem and the developer comes wanting a change to this agreement, they have to ask for it, we can say no. We told them no once before down the street, and we told them we'd work with them on another part. But we could have said no each time. So I'm not in favor of the city being involved in the sale of land. It's never worked out well.
Yes.
Mayor, I'm thinking, I look at Johnny and Orloff, and, their names attached. If they sell any of that property by assignment, it really reflects on them. And I know they want to have a good product. So I think my feeling is to trust that because their name's attached to that entire development, they're going to be as cautious as we would want to be as cautious.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
John, on the other MPC zones, we haven't done any of this, have we?
We didn't have we did have the notify us in writing if there's a transfer.
Okay. Thank you.
Council, are we ready to act on this particular item?
Is it an agreement number? What's it?
The resolution number is 11-2019, and the agreement number is A22-2019.
This is one of those double ones.
Oh, wait a second, we've got another one too.
So there's three things, Council. There's the agreement. So there's a resolution that approves the agreement, and then there's also the ordinance that approves the zone map amendment. So there's three different numbers, but also, Council, there was the request to do the modification from 34 to 41. On the apartments, I know that there has been concern raised over building heights, so I don't want to just gloss over it and make it. I just want the council to make sure you're all comfortable, and pick a direction, and then we can make sure that the language in the motion matches which direction you want to go on that issue.
And we made that adjustment on height with Village of Prominent Point, right? Yeah. Just for clarification.
So Village at Prominence Point actually allows up to 51 feet. So this is 41 feet, which is 6 feet taller than your standard residential zone allowance.
But it also, we gave them 4 stories down there.
And they had 4 stories down there.
Official 4 stories.
So the way they work is it's a 3-story walk up, and then there's a loft in the end units that make it that 4th story that got them to the 51 feet.
So I'm sorry, Annette.
Yes.
I was just going to say, so that in approving this development agreement, we're approving their ability to assign. Okay. I just want to make that clear.
And if you want to change the 34 to 41, that needs to be included in the motion. If you don't, they do have a design that matches the 34 feet. It just doesn't have as steep a pitch of a roof.
So you need to pass a resolution, which is 11-2019, that's adopting the development agreement, which is A22-19, for the rezone of ordinance 2019-27.
Phil, did you write those all down?
What was the rezone again?
2019-27.
You got it?
Well, yeah, but I think we need to discuss on the height first.
I agree.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it since we've done it before.
If there's a precedent set, I'm okay with it.
What do you mean by, fine, you mean fine with the, to
Since
40?
41 feet.
We've
41.
raised it before for another NPC zone. Cheryl?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
All right, well, in that case, Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt Resolution 11-2019. Wait, did I say that right already?
Yep.
Okay, Resolution 11-2019, which is adopting the agreement 22-2019 for a rezone of ordinance 2019-27, with a lot of words in the middle.
Including the
The height.
41 height.
Oh, yeah, including the height raising up to 41 feet.
And council, just to be clear, that will be included, the 41 will change in the development agreement and the attached exhibits where appropriate.
As John stated.
And I will second that.
Okay, we've had a motion, and I'm not going to repeat all that. And by Councilman Stoker, we've had a second by Councilman,
No, it wasn't me.
Councilman
sorry,
Barker.
Councilman Barker, and we've had a second by Councilman Turner. Begin the voting with, any other discussion? Begin the voting then with Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilman Barker,
Yes.
Councilman Severine.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
John, I'm proud of you. You said you weren't going to say anything else, and you didn't.
He can't hear you.
That's okay. That's all right.
Okay, the next item is item number 6. Discussion or action to consider an ordinance amending the monument sign ordinance in chapter 11-222-7 C.7A.B. Presenter will be Robert Scott, Planning Director.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and audience. Back in October, the city received a request from a property owner, Alan Curbs, who's been involved with the redevelopment of the,
Physical therapy place.
well, he's doing the physical therapy, what was there, Title Max, or Title,
Yeah, Title Max building.
yeah. So it's that same building and what have you. As part of the project, he came up with a design for his sign that did not meet our ordinance with respect to height. Monument signs currently are allowed to be 10 feet and to have a maximum height of 10 feet. And what he was interested in doing was putting on a roof structure over the existing sign. He hasn't really changed the sign other than the coloration and so forth. And his pitch was that it was going to make the sign more secure from the weather and so forth. And so he came before the Planning Commission. We discussed it a couple times. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the 20th of November, and you have before you the ordinance as recommended by the city's Planning Commission. It was a 6-0 vote in favor of that. So the language is, for existing signs, an additional 2 feet in height may be added for a decorative feature, for example, a roof that does not include any additional sign lettering. So that is the language that the Planning Commission is recommending to you for your consideration. One point was that they did not want to automatically grant an additional 2 feet, which would be 12 feet in height. They only wanted to grant that for existing signage. So I would be happy to answer questions.
So new signs will be under 10 feet.
They would be a maximum of 10 feet, correct?
So, Rob, 10 feet from where? From the curb, from the ground it's on, or?
Yeah, from the ground that it's on.
Okay, so if there's a hill and it's on that hill, then it's okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I think it says natural grade, if I remember right.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Brandon? Yeah.
I believe it's from the ground below.
Yeah.
Questions, discussion, council?
Is there an ordinance number?
2019-28.
Mayor, I'd move that we approve ordinance 2019-28, amending the monument sign ordinance in chapter 11-22-7C.7A, as discussed.
Second.
It's been moved that we approve the monument sign ordinance, chapter 11-222-7C7AB. It's been seconded by Councilwoman Stoker. Any other discussion or questions? Not, we'll begin the vote with Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Councilman Barker.
Yes.
Councilman Severie.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker.
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is fiscal year 2020 budget amendments, and that will be presented by Evan Nelson, our finance director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have a few amendments to the budget that we would like to propose. And the packet included a staff report that explains what those are. We have amendments proposed in the city budget as well as the RDA budget. So if you decide to approve these, well, I guess we'll have a meeting of the RDA after the discussion on the city proposals. So I'll just do a brief summary of those, and you can ask any questions that you have. The first one is a correction in the use of fund balance in the capital improvement fund, and this was the result of a mistake that we made when we amended the budget in November. So that's just correcting the use of fund balance that had been eliminated by mistake related to the amphitheater. The next item is an adjustment for the city engineer. The council recently approved to bring the city engineer to full-time status as a result of the termination of the agreement with Pleasant View City. And so we're proposing $22,410 to fund that action. That's the estimated amount to get us through the end of the fiscal year. But the ongoing impact of that decision would be around $45,000 annually. So that's that item. And I guess I should mention, rather than trying to offset that engineering expense with new revenues or modifying our revenue estimate, we proposed to reduce some of the other expenditure lines in the general fund in order to make that possible. So we proposed reducing the sidewalk repair budget by $5,000, the engineering budget by $6,000, and the snow removal budget by $7,690. Those recommendations came after discussing this with the Public Works Director, and so that's the recommendation that we came to. In the original budget, we had a budgeted surplus of $8,380, and part of this proposal eliminates that budgeted surplus and puts part of that toward the engineer budget and part toward the elections proposal. So the elections, as we've gone through the elections this year, the expense came in $4,660 above what we had anticipated in the budget, and so we're asking to increase that budget by that amount. And then the last proposal in the city's budget is amending the budget for a proposed donation for the Gold Star Monument in the amount of $6,472. Do you have any questions on any of those items?
Yes, Brian?
I've got two questions. With the engineer, when he was a part-time, when we're sharing the costs with Pleasant View, weren't we still contracting with Jones and Associates?
Yes.
Are we still going to be contracting with them if he's a full-time status here?
I believe we are.
So Lauren does not do detailed design work, and so we'll still be relying on him. Particularly, he will be taking over the project management responsibilities, which Jones has done on some projects, and like with the new road project, he will be the project manager and ask them for help as he needs, but we anticipate it reducing time of Jones and Associates.
Well, that was my question. If we're reducing a little of what we pay them, won't that reduce, I mean, can't you just move the money from them to Lauren?
So
I know it's hard to do.
Maybe I should let Evan answer.
I can respond. A lot of the work that Jones does is in connection with capital projects, and so the budgets for those are in various funds. You know, the water fund would have part of that, and the sewer fund, and so on. So, yes, I mean, there's some logic there. I think it may be a little more complicated to figure out where all of those engineering dollars are in the budget. So this may be a simpler approach on paper, but I think we'll hopefully find over the course of time that we're going to be realizing savings on various projects and other operations of the city too.
Okay.
And I also think there's a risk when we start using capital project funds to pay salaries that we're blending the line, and it's easier to make sure that capital projects are going to physical costs as opposed to staffing costs.
Yep, that makes sense. And then my second question, on the donation, when it got presented about the Gold Star Monument, they said the city would not be donating any money.
Mayor?
Yes.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
This was the first I've heard of it. That's why I'm just curious.
And I was going to bring that up after
Okay.
you were done. So it is, it's not me, but it is an elected official that has graciously donated their salary through the city to the monument.
Okay.
So it's not
Oh,
the
okay.
city, it's
Nope.
an elected official.
Okay, that answers my question.
Who is
Okay.
doing it that way. And we're very thankful for it.
John, do we pay Jones and Associated a fee, or just when they're used? I mean, I know we pay them, but it's at a
So it's based hourly.
okay.
So if
we're not using them, they're not getting paid.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no retainer that we pay monthly or anything like
Okay.
that.
Other questions or discussions from the council? If not, I would open it up for public hearing on this particular item. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to.
Move to close the public hearing.
It's been moved to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now we'll have a motion to recess the current meeting and convene in the RDA.
Do we have to do consideration of the ordinance first?
Oh, yes, sorry. Missed the fine print there, thank you. Discussion or action to consider the ordinance amending the 2020 fiscal year budget.
Well, can I ask one question? Excuse me. So this is only this pertains only through capital improvement through the donation, right? Not on the RDA.
Correct.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
What's the ordinance number?
let's see, no, I'm right here. 2019-29.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance 2019-29, an ordinance amending the fiscal year budget of 2020.
Second.
Been a motion by Councilman Barker to approve the ordinance amending the 2020 fiscal year budget, 2019-29, seconded by Councilman Swanson. Any other questions or discussion? Begin the voting with Councilman
Hold on,
Barker.
Mayor. Yeah, I got a question. We closed that public hearing really quick. Is there a way to open it back up for a question? That's my question. Can we do it?
You can do anything
Before we
in
vote on
the-
the ordinance, can we open the public hearing back up?
So
for a minute?
yes, even if you had passed the ordinance, you could still do the public hearing and reconsider the ordinance. So
Has to be a public hearing or just a discussion from the,
whatever, if it's from the public,
It's from the public. Can we open up the public hearing? I make a motion, we open the public hearing.
Second.
been moved and seconded, we opened up the public hearing and seconded. Begin the voting with, or is this it?
You could just do all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Public hearing is open again.
I'm Kathy Warren, 720 East, 2550 North in North Ogden, obviously. I guess this kind of passed by me. Is that better?
Thank you.
I have to kind of move it down. Okay, it kind of passed by me and I didn't realize, because I'd seen this tonight online when I was looking, and it wasn't making any sense to me, and I didn't realize you guys were including this without talking about it. But it's the electric signboards that they want to put up.
That comes up next.
Next.
Oh, it's next.
But there's no public hearing for it.
Yes, there is.
Yes.
Oh,
D.
so I will shut up and sit down.
Okay.
Like, it's in the budget though, right, the money?
For the RDA,
And the RDA is paying for the electric signs.
but that's next.
That's the next discussion.
I just have a Neil Brewery, 1532 East, you know the address. Just a clarification, if the budget's being amended to include the money to do the signs, haven't we already approved the signs? If the budget's being amended to pay for them?
We haven't got to that budget yet. We're just amending the budget we just talking about
Well,
here.
it didn't, because the thing I saw in the packet had all the amendments in there.
But we haven't addressed the electronic
So-
side yet.
Okay, we'll wait to talk about that then until the
Okay.
electric signs come up. But just to save time, so I don't have to come up again, I would express my opinion on the electric signs. Two things. One is, if you research that, that's not a really good method of communication. It's way down the line. I did see where he addressed the safety issue, but I think we have to ask the question, is this how the citizens expect us to spend their money when we have so many other priorities? So just my feeling.
Thank you. Okay, now a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
And second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Okay, need a motion to recess the current meeting to consider.
We got to
haven't
vote on
voted
the
on
ordinance.
The RD, the
No, I'm back to my ordinance of
the budget
Okay,
amendment.
that's right, we decided to go back to the, okay. Proceed.
It's
Was
been
it-
seconded already.
Pardon?
Wasn't already seconded and everything, so now we just have to vote on it.
Okay, then it's been moved and seconded to consider ordinance amending the 2020 fiscal year budget. Been moved and seconded. Any other questions or discussion? If not, we'll start the voting with Councilman Severing,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilman Barker.
yes.
Motion approved. Now a motion to recess the current meeting and convene in the RDA meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilman Turner.
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilwoman Stoker. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, meeting is open. Evan, you're the presenter on this item.
I apologize. I didn't make it very clear how this was meant to go. So just for the information of the audience, the RDA budget, that refers to the redevelopment agency, and their budget is separate from the city's budget. So the city council considers and approves the city's budget, and then they take on a different role as the board of the redevelopment agency to approve a separate budget that's not the city budget. So these items related to the electronic signs are being proposed as an amendment to the redevelopment agency budget. So now our city council is acting as the redevelopment agency board when considering this item. So the proposal here is to utilize current year redevelopment revenue that had previously been set aside as reserve for a future project. And so the proposal is to use $100,000 of that reserve to go toward the purchase of 2 electronic signs. One sign to be out here in front of City Hall and the other sign to be placed at Bicentennial Park. There was some information in the packet related to possible sign designs. I'm not necessarily expert on those details, but as far as the money goes and the budget, if you want to approve this, then you would adopt the attached ordinance as an RDA board. I would like to just mention a month or two ago we had, I guess it was in September, we had a discussion about RDA funds, and we went through a list of possible projects that the RDA could be involved with and possible ways to use the money that the RDA has. We need to spend RDA money on something. We have a time limitation on that. And so I think the council or the board, the RDA board, has the opportunity to decide what the best use of that money is.
Evan, when is that time frame up?
I believe it's 2023. Does that sound right, John?
2023.
So we have some time.
Evan, what were some of the that we could use it for? We were just for the sake of mine and the public here.
Okay, I'll just run through the list. We had, and this list was just kind of some ideas that had been discussed. It's not an exhaustive list, but so there could be other possibilities. But the things that we discussed were relocating the wetlands out here west of City Hall, or possibly adding recreational improvements to the wetlands. Another one was improvements at Bicentennial Park. Another is landscaping behind Lee's. That one is actually approved in the current budget, although it has not happened yet. Number 4 was aquatic center upgrades. Number 5, streetscape improvements, which would be widening sidewalks, tree plantings, street lighting, those sorts of things. Another item we discussed was the vacant land south of Smith's Marketplace. It's owned by IHC, and it's undeveloped land at this moment. Number 7 is burying the power lines on Washington Boulevard. Number 8, we talked about the possibility of helping to redevelop North Ogden Plaza. And so that was the list that we talked about.
Do you know, Evan, any idea on what they were thinking about for the aquatic center?
The idea was, the aquatic center was constructed with a bond, but RDA money is what we use to pay that annual payment. And so the thought was, when we get to the end of the bond, or close to the end, It will have been 20 years or so since the aquatic center was built, and would probably be in need of, renovation or significant maintenance. And so the thought was, if we still have money in the RDA, to put it into the aquatic center to get it ready for the next 20 years was kind of the thought behind that.
So there's nothing necessarily right now in need at the aquatic center. This is just, if we get to 2023 and we have some extra, we're going to do this.
I think the aquatic center people would say there are needs. I don't know the extent of those needs, but
each of the items on that list are potential sources of project funds or places to send the project funds to. We're not going to be able to do all of them. And so the council in the coming years will need to decide which projects are the most important. And it would include a deep dive into what improvements are being talked about, if that's one of the projects the council wants to focus on, or the board.
Any questions for Evan? No, we'll open up for public hearing on this particular item. Now it's your turn.
It's my turn.
Welcome.
Okay, Kathy Warren, 720 East, 2550 North. Okay, when I read about these signs, I think it's a waste of money. Hearing that they're the marquee, who's going to have time to read them without hitting somebody, slowing down traffic? We've already got problems out here, at certain times of the day. I just think the money would be better spent somewhere else, not wasting it on marquee signs. I don't even know how you'd see the one over by the Bicentennial Park. So I'm really against the signs, and I just wanted to say that. I thought it was a waste of money, and I'd rather see it go to something like maybe the aquatic center or something like that. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Brenda Ashdown, 193 East Pleasant View Drive in North Ogden. I don't think that the electric signs are the best way to spend the money. I think that in almost any of the other projects that were mentioned, I think would be a better way. So if I want to know what's going on in the city, I either have to drive over here. I still think that there's a better way to let people know what's going on in the city than a sign. And we pay for these signs now. Who's going to maintain them? How long are they going to be there? I have no idea what you have as far as height and stuff, but I think the money can be spent much better in something else that would be much more benefit to more people in the city. I'd rather see the money spent and go back to putting a newsletter in the bills and getting the information out that way than reading it from a sign as I'm trying to drive by. And one other thing I want to mention is on Pleasant View Drive, in front of my house, you guys did a walkway. And poor Tiffany gets an email from me so often about these little teeny lights that were put in that do not work most of the time. As people go by, walk by, they hit them, they break them. I think it's a little silly. They either need to be something that, brings me to the concern of the maintenance of the signs, because these are not being maintained. So we're adding one more thing that somebody's going to have to maintain. If you go by your street ordinances already of your signs, they're going to be at a height where people are going to destroy them. And I just don't think it's the best way to get the information out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Mona Lisa Wald, 2457 North, 750 East. So I have a degree in advertising, public relations and advertising, and the best thing you could do is invest in advertising. So I support this, and I think it's the best thing you can do. I can't read the signs that are currently up every time I drive by the library Sometimes the wind blows them over, or sometimes the snow is on top of it and kind of folds the sign over. I can't read the sign right now that is currently advertising for the Barker Park nativity activity that's going to be going on. I think it's an excellent idea. And if you cannot properly advertise for all of the events and activities, especially from a Parks and Rec department perspective, then don't even bother doing the activities. You will have so much more success in everything you propose to do if you can advertise properly and people can see the signs. So I support it completely. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment.
Susan Clements, 668 East, 3125 North. When I read this, I thought, oh, good, an electric sign. Because way back when we were doing the public meeting for the amphitheater, and we were trying to get the word out, we didn't have an electric sign. I think had we had that electric sign, more people would have understood that we're having this meeting, we're going to be discussing these things, and come and give us your input. So I really think this is a really good idea. I wish I remember when you approved the electric sign for North Ogden Elementary School, and I thought, yeah, wonderful. I wish Bates had one, but I know that's really expensive to run all the wiring and everything for that. But I really think it is a good idea to get that information out to the people and let them know, if nothing else, that you have city council tonight, the nativity, any other big. The only thing two things I'm concerned about is one, the height, because you're going to have to go with the same height that you require everybody else to do. So you may want to change that. What was the other one? I can't remember what the other one was. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I probably have to confess that this is kind of my idea. I'd like to see electric signs like we see in other cities, but I'll leave it up to the council and the citizens.
Hi, Spencer Alexander, 1740 North, 150 East. On the signs, I think I'd rather pass unless it's like that kicking cowgirl from Las Vegas. I think we might need one of those, right? I don't know. I mean, that just seems like a bad placement. Like, don't you have a lot of signs from McDonald's and things like that that are kind of flashing? It just seems like it might get lost. I don't know the exact placement, but anyway. So for me, I'd rather pass. Maybe it goes somewhere else, like the money. Something to consider. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. See no other comments. Motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion to close the public hearing. Second. And second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next item then is discussion or action to consider electronic signboards.
Well, Mayor, one of my goals for 2020 as a city councilman is to push more transparency, more communication, and so initially I was really excited about the idea of at least one of the signs out here on 2600. So I called around to the only ones I know of that have signs that local are Pleasant View and Harrisville, and the one staff woman over at Pleasant View. She was excited. She felt like Pleasant View's had a pretty good experience with their sign, other than they'd had complaints from citizens who said it either is too long and we don't catch the whole message, or it's too short and we miss it. I'm not sure what she meant by that. Harrisville City, the individuals I spoke to there didn't think that it was they were getting the kind of bang for their buck for the cost in Harrisville. And so I've kind of taken a different thought. I talked to I know there's got to be cheaper ways of being able to improve communication with the citizens. I talked to Annette today about our website, our new website. There has to be I talked to some other individuals today who do websites, and if we could get out some whether we send out postcards or door hangers and get as many people as we can registered on our website to receive notices. I just think I'd like to try a little less expensive methods to be able to get out communication rather than spending $100,000. I just think that I'm kind of with Brenda. I would rather take $100,000 out of the RDA and put it into maybe the aquatic center where we're starting to get some return for our money, rather than just having signs that are maybe probably not really utilized like we think. So that's just my thought.
Other comments? Yes.
I agree with Blake in that we need to continue the efforts that we're making to get information out. The webpage is still only going to, no matter how good it is, it's only going to reach a small portion of our city because there's so many that are either just not regular internet users and they just don't. So there's still that portion that we miss. I am interested in the idea of going back to including, excuse me, the letters back in the utility billing. I think that was, you brought that up, Brenda, right? That's certainly a less expensive way. But from years past, we also have seen that even those, most people ignore them. They don't read them. They open up the envelope, it gets tossed, and then we still have, we have something that's been sent to every home, and we still have residents saying that they had no idea it was happening. So I've been scratching my head. How do we effectively get information out to the residents? I think the signs are one way that can be done. I don't think it's the answer to everything. I don't think we have an answer to everything. I think no matter what we do, even if we did everything in combination, we would still have residents who don't know what's going on, who aren't aware, and get caught or blindsided by something that the city does or an event that we hold or whatever. So I don't know. Personally, I think the signs are okay. I wouldn't say they're great. I won't say they're bad. They're okay. I think given where the funds come from the RDA, from the other taxing entities, I think it would be a reasonable expenditure for us to do the signs. But I think we can't look at this as the only thing that we do to increase communication with the residents about what's going on in the city. That's my biggest fear, is that this ends up becoming a de facto end-all, that we just say, okay, well, we've got these great signs now, everybody should have an opportunity. I think there are more things that we need to do in addition to get as broad a band as we can of communication out to the residents.
Mayor?
Yes.
I agree with Phil on, I think the signs are a good idea, but maybe not at this point. I think the money can be spent elsewhere. As I look down this list, we've had concerns and talked about Bicentennial Park. The residents see that more than they see a sign. And some of us were there cleaning it up, trying to, and it looked a lot better after we'd done it, but there could still be more to improve it. And also the aquatic center, that gets used a lot, is way used more than the sign or of use and value. So I agree. I think the money could be spent better. It needs to be spent better right now. It's maybe a want rather than a need. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
I wonder how much one of those bat signal signs would cost. Remember the old lights when something new was opening? You run one of those every night right before city council meeting?
Yeah.
Councilman Turner?
I'm in favor of the sign. Just thought I'd give my opinion.
Okay.
I like the idea.
I'm not so much in favor of it. I talked to Pleasant View today as well. They like their sign. They said they'd get a lot more use if the city would pay to send someone to training on how to use it. So that's something that's not even been discussed, is if we get these signs, who are we going to pay to send to training to use it? And then there's a lot more maintenance than just a one-time fee. And also I look, if it's going slow enough that you can read it, you might only catch one thing before you're past it. If you want to see a fast sign, go look at Green Acres. It goes so fast you can't even read it. So that's the other issue that Harrisville, and like Blake said, Harrisville says they don't get the bang for their money because people are driving 55 and you can't even see, you read one thing and you're past it. So I agree. I don't know if this is really this is a want. We could use that money a lot of other areas and maybe get more benefit out of it.
Thank you, Council. Yes.
I wouldn't call this a want. I would say it's an attempt to address a need that we have. I'm agreeing with the other council members that it probably isn't the most effective way that we can do it. So.
Any other comments or discussion? Then I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd move that we don't have to do anything, do we, John?
You could table it.
Table it.
You can
Table it, or just,
You don't have to move to not approve, but you could if you wanted to. I mean, if the council doesn't take action, the budget doesn't change, and there's nothing that happens.
well, for clarity,
Or the
let's just
board.
do the motion. What do you think?
Go ahead.
I move then that we not approve the electronic signboards at this time.
Okay, it's been moved not to approve the signboards and by Councilman Swanson,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Stoker. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, we'll begin the voting with Councilman Severin,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Nope, I want
Oh,
them.
I guess I say no, huh?
Nope, you say yes.
Say yes.
I say yes.
You say yes because you
That's
don't
right.
want them. I say no because I want them.
That's right. Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilman Barker.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. No electronic signboards.
So that means we don't have to do F then, right?
Yep. That's right.
Okay,
Is that right on F?
That's correct. So there wouldn't be a need to just consider the ordinance.
okay.
So we just need to reconvene back into the council meeting.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn and reconvene in the regular meeting.
So moved.
Been moved that we adjourn and reconvene in the regular meeting.
I second that.
Second by Councilman Severin. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, council. Item 8, discussion or action to consider an ordinance amending the personnel policy. Presenter will be Annette Spendlove, our city recorder director.
Okay, Mayor and Council, we brought this to you in August, but there were some things that URS needed us to change. One of them is this is the definition of part-time. And we had permanent part-time, and we're changing that to part-time to meet what they want. And we had our post-retired employees as part-time. They need to be called URS retired employees. And our permanent part-time will be called part-time employees. So as you went through this, when you were reading your packets, that was changed on page 5. And then also it affected page 13 on D there. Part-time needed to be changed to URS retired employment. And then we had to take out some things which cannot exceed more than 29 hours per week. URS has some rules different than that because this was our part. Anyway, they can only work up to $15,000 annually. So they have certain limits for them depending on where they're retired at. So that changed D a lot. And then E, of course, you see permanent taken off there, and we put part-time employees in that section E. And we added elected officials and planning commission members are part-time, and they do not qualify for regular benefits. So we added that there on page 13. Then if you go over to page 47, we had to add something that the Utah Code requires when it comes to, if you look there on E on page 47, when it comes to employees that have separated from the city and other agencies, other police agencies are doing background checks. We have to provide everything for police background checks that we don't have to provide for other employees.
So
we're required to.
So to make that, what that is there's some cover given to cities and state agencies in the state code that says you can tell people the bad stuff that police officers who no longer work for you have done if they're being considered for hiring at a new agency, because there were some individuals who were hopping from agency to agency around the state. Under the previous HR rules, cities couldn't say don't hire this person, they're not a good officer, and this allows cities to say that now, so that there's not this jurisdiction hopping, and the state has been much better because of this provision.
And I never say anything. I just let them read the material, the comments in their packet and those kinds of things. So just so you know, I don't say.
You don't know how to say anything mean anyway.
Okay. Tell my kids that. Okay. And then on page 49, on 3A, those words permanent part-time and URS retired were added in there on A, B, and C. You can see those redlined. And there was some other stuff in here that just popped up from the last time you guys amended this. Doesn't mean anything. We're only working on permanent part-time, the URS retired, and everything else. We just had some problems taking that out. And then on 65, page 65, under holidays, we took out the word permanent. There on holidays, D1. And then on page 66, the same thing. We took out the word permanent on item 5 there. And same thing on page 77. Took out permanent part-time in those and just corrected to what we need to have, and those were the changes we made. Any questions?
What's the ordinance number?
I need to go back, and I'll give that to you.
Okay.
30.
I'm gonna get 30.
1930.
2019-30.
You ask, you go for it.
Okay. I move that we approve ordinance 2019-30, amending the personnel policy.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Severin to approve 2019-30. Discussion or action to consider ordinance amending the personnel policy.
I'll second.
A second by Councilman Stoker.
Barker.
Barker, sorry. I got the R on the end,
Your
right?
voice has changed.
My
And you
hair's
got a lot
shorter,
better
too.
looking.
Yeah, I did.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we'll begin the voting then with Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilman Barker,
Yes.
okay, Councilman Severin.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
He's already retired.
Where's your sign? Point it towards it.
Yeah.
Next item is Walker annexation for property located at 1825 North Fruitland Drive, North Ogden, Utah. It will be presented by Annette Spendlove, our city recorder and HR director.
Council, Mayor, we have, application was submitted, and you have that exhibit, Exhibit A, on October 16th. You first saw this. The applicant was petitioning for annexation of approximately 1.02 acres located at 1825 North Fruitland Drive. The annexation process requires the City Council to accept the petition for annexation so that the annexation process can begin, which was done October 22nd, 2019. The Weber County Surveyor had reviewed the annexation plat map and approved it on October 15th, 2019. And this property is within the North Ogden City Annexation Declaration Policy, and you've seen a copy of that in your packet. The petitioner is requesting the zoning to stay R-1-8, which the Planning Commission has recommended at their November 6, 2019 meeting. The Utah State Code requires that the city give notice of annexation for 3 consecutive weeks in a newspaper of local circulation, and that was done no later than 10 days after the council receives the notice of certification, which was certified by the city recorder on November 4th, 2019. A public hearing is required and was noticed on December 8th and 15th, and that public hearing will be held tonight. Written protests to this annexation were to be filed no later than December 13th. There were no written protests submitted as of that date. We'll wait for the public hearing.
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
Okay, it's open for public hearing on this particular item. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the
Close
public
the
hearing.
public hearing. Move to close the public hearing.
And move that we close the public hearing by Councilman Swanson,
Second.
and second by Councilwoman Stoker. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item then is discussion or action to consider ordinance amending the property at the location above 1825 North Fruitland Drive, 1.02 acres. Ordinance number?
2019-31.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to annex the property at approximately 1825 North Fruitland Drive in North Ogden, to annex it. The 1.2 acres.
Ordinance number?
Oh, yes, 2019-31.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Stoker to approve the annexing of the property located at 1825 North Fruitland Drive, number 2019-31.
Second.
And second by Councilman Swanson. Any other discussion or questions? If not, we'll begin the voting with Councilwoman Stoker.
Yes.
Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Councilman Barker.
Yes.
Councilman Severine.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you. Item 10 is discussion or action to consider the voter participation areas. This will be presented by John Call, City Manager Attorney.
So, Council, this item is something that we've been given as a state mandate. You need to do this. This only affects initiatives and referendums. It doesn't do anything with voter precincts or anything like that. The purpose of House Bill 119 that was passed back in the legislative session this spring was to, if there's an initiative or a referendum, then the people gathering signatures have to get signatures from each of the voter participation areas in the correct percentage so that they don't just get it all from one side of the city. For a city of our size, we're required to have 4 voter participation areas. They're required to be contiguous, meaning that you could walk or drive across them without crossing into a new voter participation area. The county helped us create these. They are tied to our voter precincts that the county sets for us, but they are established based on population size and comply with the state requirements. I'll just bring up the maps of each of them. we've called them voter participation areas A, B, C, and D because our precincts are numbered 1 through 13, and we didn't want to cause any confusion, so we went with the alphabet as opposed to numerical designations. It's kind of hard to see, and we will create a better map than what you see here to have ready for the packets if there isn't ever an initiative or a referendum. But essentially, voter participation area A is the southern quarter of the city. Area B is kind of the mid-western portion of the city. Participation area C is the northeastern corner, and participation area D is the northwestern corner. We are required under the state statute to reevaluate these in 2 years and then every 10 years after that. The requirements for the voter participation areas are set by state code. They're contiguous. They have to be compact, meaning that you can't, it's not supposed to be so impractical that people can't canvass the area. And then the other thing is they must be substantially equal in population. The county recommended we follow the districting lines or the precinct lines because it makes it less confusing for people who are trying to gather signatures and for people who are trying to verify that signatures were received in the appropriate areas. If the council does want to look at the option of drawing them based on our own numbers, we can do that. We'll likely need a consultant to help us go out and get population estimates in various neighborhoods and spend a little money or time of employees going out and counting people. Staff's recommendation is to go with the county precinct recommendation. It does show that the largest or the least amount of population is in voter participation area B with just over 4,500, and the highest is voter participation area A of just votes apart, or 500 population apart. But that, using the precincts lines, that was the closest the county could get while keeping them contiguous. So they could have gotten closer if they could have, picked so they didn't have to share a boundary with each other. But in order to meet all the state codes, this was the closest they could get. So any questions about this or?
Does this need to be an ordinance?
It's a resolution.
It's a resolution. Have a resolution number?
12-2019.
Any questions and discussion from the council?
I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 12-2019, the voter participation areas as discussed.
Been moved by Councilman Barker that we approve the voter participation areas 12-2019.
Second.
And second by Councilwoman Stoker. Did I say the wrong name again?
No. You got it right.
Okay. Little chuckles here, so I gotta
We're
make sure.
laughing with you, Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we'll begin the vote on the Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Councilman Barker.
Yes.
Councilman Severie.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker.
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you. Item 11, discussion or action to consider meeting schedules for fiscal year 2020. Presenter will be Annette Spindler.
Can we table this to the next meeting? Can we table this one to the next meeting?
Mayor and council, you had this in your packet. The Utah State Code 524-202 requires that you pass this by ordinance every year before the beginning of the calendar year, which you will use it. This is just saying when we will hold our council meetings. We've just kept them to the same schedule. It'll be the regular city council meetings for the 2020 calendar year on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month, and on the first Tuesday as needed, a work session or a regular meeting. And then I gave the schedule to be followed for the entire 2020 calendar year. The dates will be in the public notice. Any meetings that fall on election day or a holiday will be canceled. Meetings will begin at 6 p.m. and will be held here in the North Ogden City Council chambers. The RDA and CDA will meet only when called upon. The Planning Commission will meet the first and third Wednesday of every month unless otherwise noted at 6:30 in the City Council chambers here. And I also gave the dates for those meetings. And any meetings that fall on an election or a holiday will be canceled. The General Plan Steering Committee will meet the fourth Wednesday of every month unless otherwise noted at 6:30 p.m. in the City Council chambers. The Economic Development Committee will meet the fifth Tuesday as it occurs during a month unless otherwise noted at 6:30. The Public Safety Building Committee will meet the second Wednesday of every month unless otherwise noted at 6 p.m. in the courtroom at 515 East 2600 North. And those are the notices. Any questions?
Questions from the council?
Ordinance number is 2019-32.
Seeing no questions, I'd entertain a motion for
move that
next
we-
year's schedule.
I move that we accept ordinance 2019-32 for meeting schedules for the fiscal year 2020.
Been moved by Councilman Severine that we approve the meeting schedules for fiscal year 2020, ordinance number 2019-32.
Second.
And second by Councilman Swanson. Any other questions or discussion? You will begin the voting with Councilman Barker,
Yes.
Councilman Severine,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Motion approved. Meeting is now open for public comment. Little hesitation there.
Not sure if he's going to jump up there. Spencer Alexander, 1740 North, 150 East. You guys talked a little bit about building heights and whatnot, and it's kind of interesting because you're like, well, it's 5 feet here, it's 5 feet there, and I mean, from a long perspective, it probably doesn't matter that much, but like where I live over by the assisted living, I'm still wondering, like, are they going to like shove the people that have died into the top because it's like so huge? I'm used to, I think, obviously people think a flat roof means industrial, and if you add some sort of pitch, it makes it automatically beautiful, and I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Granted, buildings are nothing but walls, and it's kind of hard to actually artistically make them pleasing other than adding, molding and stuff to break that up. But sometimes I think if we're just so stuck, I mean, if it's a giant building to begin with, it's difficult to change that uniform plane anyway. That's just something that I think that's worth considering. Is it worth it, or how worth it is to the people closest to it? Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Thank you for your comment. Seeing no other comments, we'll move on with council, mayor, staff comments. Start with Councilman Turner.
Nope, other than thank you.
Okay, Councilman Severine.
No, not tonight.
Councilman Barker.
Nope.
Councilman Swanson.
Just to see you later, Carl.
I'll be
Enjoy your
around.
Tuesday nights.
I'll be around.
Been great serving with you.
You bet.
And thanks for everybody that came tonight. It's great to see everyone.
Councilwoman Stoker.
No, I've talked more than I usually do, so no.
John.
Nope, nothing new. Just it's been a fun year.
See you next year.
Yeah, see you next year.
Annette.
I have one thing. On January 7th, that is our next council meeting where we'll swear in the new members, the new mayor and the new council member. At 5 o'clock that evening, we will have an open house as we've had in the past, just to say goodbye to Carl and hello to our new.
And Brent,
And
yeah, say goodbye to
mayor.
Brent.
And the new mayor. The old mayor.
Oh, apparently we're not saying bye to him.
That's
so.
right. No, oh, yeah. I just thought I'd just stay here or something. Yes, we need to say goodbye.
Neil, I'm not staying here. Sorry.
Anyway, that's all I have.
Okay.
Mayor, I did overlook one thing. I called dibs on Carl's seat. Starting on the 7th, I'm tired of sitting here. I'm going down to the end. Dibs, double dibs. I'm going to go lick the seat if I have to. It's my seat.
You have something to You can have it.
Chief Quinny?
I'll fight you for it.
No, you won't. You'll lose.
Well, Mayor, Council, if I can just take a minute. Councilman Turner, you voted for a sign, so I'm gonna give you one.
Oh, thanks, dude.
So from the police department, just in a show of appreciation for your friendship, your support, and the service, we just got a little something for you.
Oh, my goodness.
Nice.
You can hang this around your neck, and it may or may not get you out of a citation.
Keep it in your car.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Chug, we've got something for you as well later. It comes with a mandatory court appearance, so we'll get
A frame citation, I know what it'll be. Just take a moment, since this is my last city council meeting, other than one for swearing in and swearing out, whatever that is. I'd like to thank the council for their great support. It's been wonderful to work with them. They're men of high integrity and devotion to their work, and I really appreciate them. They've been a great help to me in this particular situation. I'd like to thank all of you. Your friendship means a lot to me, and I appreciate coming to city council meetings and having the opportunity to hear your suggestions and your concerns for the city. So thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. And I'll entertain now a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Been moved and second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.